Hello. Okay, this is the first video of two videos of the ACES phone. I'm going to read the first part of the story with you, so follow along, and then tomorrow I will post another video with the second half of the story and your comprehension. Okay, so I'm on page 107, the title page. It says the ACES phone, from noisy outlaws, unfriendly blobs, and some other things. Okay, so we see a child, looks like, on a phone, a cell phone. If you did your picture walk, you could see a little bit about what's going on, what you might think the story is about. So now we're going to delve in and see what it's about. An essential question that we're going to keep in mind when we're reading this is, what is the difference between hearing and listening? Okay, I think I've talked to you guys about this before. There's a difference between hearing something and listening to something. So let's see how this book relates to that question. Okay, page 108. Martin loves his big roiling family, but there is barely enough room for all of them, plus him in their crowded urban apartment. He occupies much of his time and stays out of everyone's way. By skating outdoors for hours, feeling as the time goes by that there is a void in his life he ought to fill. When he finds his cell phone in the park one day, Martin presses the speed dial numbers in an attempt to identify its owner. His attempts seem futile or hopeless until he presses the number 5. The phone only rang once. Then there was a click and a brief silence, and then came a sound unlike anything he heard before. It seemed to come from both far away and near. A clamor made up of 1,000 thread-like voices, and along with the noise came a blast of feelings so strong it nearly knocked him off the bench. He pitched forward, as if he had gotten a sudden terrible cramp. The feeling poured into his ear and flooded down through his chest and into his blood and raced like fire all throughout his body. It wasn't rage or fear or joy or love, but a mixture of all of them, so strong that he cried out and dropped the phone on the ground. The pigeons, thinking it might be something to eat, flocked around it. He bent down to pick it up, shaking. Cautiously, he put the phone near his ear, not right against it this time, and listened. The strange, immense chorus of sound still poured out, and the feeling jolted him again. It was so strong that he couldn't stay sitting on the bench. He had to get up and move. He paced furiously around the playground, under the swings, over to the slide, and around the jungle gym. It was a good thing no one else was there. He knew he looked very odd, as if the wind was blowing him this way and that. After a long time, he began to notice something. The feeling that was shot through him changed slightly as he changed his direction. When he walked towards the baseball diamond, his heart beat harder, as if he were afraid. When he walked towards Avenue B, he grew calmer. When he went out of the park and down 14th Street, he felt weighed down by sadness. It was like that game where you're looking for something and the other person says, "You're hot." "No, you're getting colder." "No, really cold." No, you're hot again." But what was he looking for? He had no idea. The next day, he had a terrible time concentrating at school. He was wildly impatient to try out the phone again. It wasn't quite as cold, so a few people were in the park when he got there. A mother pushing her toddler on a swing, a couple of kids going backwards down the slide, and an old woman in a knit hat and a lumpy purplish coat trudging along the path by the baseball diamond. Okay, on to page 110. Okay. Martin stood within a clump of trees at the corner of the park, turned on the phone and pressed 5. Once again, the torrent of sound feeling rushed through him and forced him to start walking. He went towards Avenue B, since that made him feeling calmer yesterday. But it didn't work today. Everything was different. He felt a pang of fear as he went toward the jungle gym, and a jolt of joy as he neared the picnic tables. Finally, when he got back to the park bench, he just stopped. He turned off the phone and sat down, completely confused. That was when he felt a poke in his back, and a voice said, "That phone you got? That's mine." He whirled around. Behind him stood the old woman he'd seen before. She was glaring at him from under the rim of her knit hat, which looked like a purple pancake dropped just above her eyes. She pointed to the phone in his hand and said again, "That's mine. I must have dropped it yesterday." Martin held on to it tighter. "Prove it," he said. The old woman laughed. "Easy. I bet you called my number 5, right?" He just stared at her. All of a sudden, he recognized her. Mrs. DeSalvo was her name, though she was usually called Mrs. D. He had seen her for years around the neighborhood, always tramping along with a phone held to her ear. People joked about her. They said she must have the most long-winded family in the world because she always seemed to be listening, hardly ever talking. "Ever heard anything like that before?" she said. He shook his head. "What is it?" She came around to his side of the bench and sat down beside him with a thump, wafting out a smell that reminded Martin of his pastrami sandwich. "Why should I tell you?" she said. "Because you want your phone back," said Martin, edging away and putting the phone in his pocket. "Because you want your phone back." Oh, sorry, skipped a line. She pinned him with her eyes. They were clear eyes, Martin saw. "First," she said, "you tell me about you. Who are you? Talk to me." He could have just stood up and walked away, or run. She could have never caught him. But he thought the phone probably was hers, which meant she knew what was going on with it, and he wanted to know too. So he talked. She listened. She said, "Good, good," when he told her about skating. She frowned and bunched up her lips when he told her about where he lived. The too small, too crowded, too noisy apartment that he just didn't want to go home to after school. "You should have a job after school," she said. "Yeah," said Martin, "but I don't know how to do anything." She leaned close to him and spoke in a low voice. "Do you like animals?" "Animals, sure. What kind?" "All kinds, I guess." "You like dogs?" "Yeah. Wish I had one." "Why don't you then?" "No dogs allowed in the building." "All right," said the woman. She took some crumbs out of her pocket and tossed them to the pigeons who clustered around her feet. "Now can you handle the strange?" "What?" "The strange," she said irritably. "You know, the strange, the unusual, the slightly weird. Can you handle that?" "Sure," said Martin. He liked strange and unusual. "I wouldn't tell you this if I thought you were going to laugh," she said, "or spread it around to your friends." "I wouldn't," said Martin, which was the truth. "I have this hunch that you might be the one. That's why I'm telling you," she said. "The one?" said Martin. "What one?" But she didn't answer. She just studied his face as if his brown eyes, his wavy black hair, and his chipped front tooth were giving her some kind of clue about him. "All right, then," she said finally. "That number you called?" She paused. She squinched up her eyes. She lowered her voice to a hoarse whisper. "The number taps you into the dogs." Martin stared at her. He didn't get it. "What?" A gust of wind blew some crumpled food wrappers across the playground. The pigeon rose to the air and settled again. "Let's walk around," the old woman said. "I'm freezing to death sitting here like this." So they walked around the path that circled the playground, around and around. And she explained, "You know dogs," she said, "they don't talk. They don't have the words, just the feelings. They got feelings so strong they fill up the air. Like, she waved her hands around, like a big network of radio waves. This phone taps into the network. If you're not used to it, you call that number and the feeling come roaring through and knock you down." Okay, I'm going to read one more page and then we'll pick up with the rest of it tomorrow, okay? So, page 113. "That's what happened to me," Martin said. But the point of a phone like that, and where did you get it? An old guy in my building gave it to me, she said, a long time ago. And the point of it is ACES. What's that? Assistance for Canines in Emergency Situations. ACES. I don't understand, said Martin. Let's sit down, she said. My feet hurt walking around like this. Yeah, Martin said, but I don't know why. Oh, sorry, I skipped some. So they sat down again. You figured out that the feeling changes when you change direction, she said. I saw you doing it. Yeah, Martin said, but I don't know why. Let me have the phone, she said, holding out her hand. Martin gave it to her. She punched the number. She frowned, clenched her jaw, and put the phone to her ear. For a few seconds, she listened. Then she nodded and handed the phone to Martin. Hold yourself strong, she said, and you could take it. He tightened all his muscles and listened. Again, the feelings rampaged through him, but they didn't strike him down. Okay, said Mrs. D. That's good. She took the phone back and turned it off. Now here's what you've been hearing. This network here covers about 20 blocks. There's others all over the cities. You don't have to worry about them. For this one, the park is the center. We're getting the vibes of all the dogs that in the 20 block area, pets and strays both. What you're hearing is like hundreds of little streams all running together in one huge river. You listen real hard and careful, and you could hear the different, well, not voices exactly, more like transmissions. Okay, so we'll see where this story leads us, okay? I'm going to pick up tomorrow with the rest of the story. Thank you for watching.